This is the Multnomah County Courts Judge Cantor explaining why Michelle Brosey should get her 13 months and her second charges to run concurrent with the first 13, so that means nothing, and the $200 fine for murder.
I do give some value to the pre-sentence investigation. I think it was thoughtful. It spent some time. At the same time, I do agree with Mr. Ramers that so much of it depends on Ms. Brosey's self-reporting that it tends to weaken it. At the same time, some of that was buttressed again by the reports of her treatment providers, which I appreciate. I thought there were some very important statements that were made by everybody here today. Perhaps one of the most significant ones being one of Mr. Day's comments just a moment ago about Ms. Brosey's actions, conduct, decisions, feelings about whether she's worthy of being alive. I think that's a very significant statement. The way she has lived her life suggests that she's had some challenges about that. She's had some doubts about that, whether she has been good enough to be a part of our community. She has certainly taken actions which suggest she doesn't want any part of the community and stayed off on the fringe in her past. At the same time, often I see people in front of me with pretty significant criminal histories when they have lived that kind of a fringe life, and that's not present here. We don't have that kind of a background with Ms. Brosey. What we have instead is someone who clearly seems to be trying now. And so for the court, the question is, how much does that offset the horrors that she engaged in earlier, that she participated in? We're not talking about someone who merely covered up something at the end, although in fact those were the charges that she was found guilty of upon her plea. But she was present at the proceedings, the before, the during, and the after. Not necessarily at the shooting itself, obviously. We may never know that. I can't completely disassociate her conduct from that. I pay attention to things that your pastor has told us about how she is beginning to take root, and that the concern is that if she's sent to prison now, the roots will loosen. It may be harder for her to regain her footing, and she may go off to the wrong direction. The spirituality that she's experiencing now and the treatment that she's in now don't prohibit, however, the idea that someone is to be held accountable to the community. In fact, the DBT programs spend a lot of time talking about appropriate consequences. What are the appropriate consequences for conduct? And when someone is not served the appropriate consequences, the concern is that they will not learn from their mistakes and they will repeat them.
Okay, so she drives the car, she has the gun, she drives there and she magically does not hear the gun go off, and this judge says he cares about what she has to think, and I never heard him talk about Tiffany once.
Or worse. And I'm taking all of that into account, and I'm hoping that Ms. Brosey is taking those into account because she's learning as she's going. And I think perhaps for the first time in her life, she's gaining as compared to losing. In my view, to leave Ms. Brosey on probation without any type of prison sentence would not be serving her long-term interests, and certainly would not be serving the interests of the community or the victim's family. And these are all appropriate considerations. But everything that has been said in support of Ms. Brosey makes me think that there is no reason why I need to consider a sentence as long as Mr. Ramers has suggested, even though there is a legal basis for his suggestion, and there's a factual basis for it, but there isn't a need for it. So I've thought about this for some time. I've had weeks and weeks to consider it, and it's, at the same time I've been learning as I've been going throughout all these proceedings. And I've concluded that the appropriate sentence for Ms. Brosey is 13 months in prison. Total. And it's going to be 13 and 13 concurrent. and I'll specify the details of that in a moment. My reason for that is because I believe Ms. Warden Brosey needs to be held accountable for her conduct, all of it on that horrible, roughly 24-hour period, and that probation alone would not do it. Ms. Warden Brosey will be on supervision for, 2 years following her time in jail, in which time she will be permitted and encouraged to engage in continuing treatment and other aspects which will help her in the future. I feel that her community, her family, and her church will be there for her when she gets out of jail. If that doesn't happen, that will be very sad, because that will significantly take away from the chance of her returning to the community and being an effective contributor to the community. For the family, there's nothing that we can do today that's going to recompense you for your loss. That's really not what sentencing is all about. But sentencing does take into account your loss. Otherwise, the law would already recommend what's called a presumptive sentence of probation. That's what the normal flow would be. But I believe the seriousness of the conduct here, and the specific, as the pre-sentence investigator talked about in terms of the aggravating factors, we have a case involving deliberate cruelty to the victim, actual violence towards the victim, use of a weapon in the commission of the offense, and the victim died. We lost someone in this.
You're kidding.
And the degree of harm or loss attributable to even the crimes for which Ms. Warden Brosey has been found guilty significantly are greater than those typical for such an offense. Many types of hindering prosecution, very few of them involve a murder.
And?
The fact that the defendant is also amenable to treatment and has proven so. So simply for me is a reason for not increasing the length of her sentence, but there needs to be some sentence. So for these reasons, as count one, I'm doing an upward dispositional departure. And I think, help me understand this, counsel, because I'm going to 13 months, is that also an upward durational departure of essentially 1 month from the way the grid block works?
And Judge, I apologize, I didn't bring the grid block out.
I'm not sure it matters significantly.
But I think technically that's...
Yeah, I think it's essentially it's a 1 month upward departure durational as well.
This is a message from Tiffany 20 hours before she was shot in the head by that woman. So as Tiffany cries, she gets out of jail, and nobody cares that Tiffany was shot in the head. As pathetic as that is, it never ends, and the question is, what are you going to do about it?
On October the 8th, 2013, Tiffany Jenks was murdered. Yet, her murder is still not solved. Within the world, there were clues, and clues became fact. And those facts have never been told. They call this the World Wide Web. In all parts of the world, the police have power. Our governments have power. Apa yang Anda perbuat untuk ini? Untuk memahami dunia baru, pertama kita harus tahu kepada siapa kita percaya.
In the murder of Tiffany Jenks, the clues were everywhere. Recordings, emails. And the night she died, she'd told John Captain they wanted to kill her. Yet police make claims to avoid you knowing the facts. But why was the police and media and her family willing to lie to make you think that things are not true? When you see the truth, it will change your life forever. And here is yet another fact you may not know in the murder of Tiffany Jenks. The night she met up with her killers, the police and the media said they all went bar hopping. Not true. When you read the police report, it said Tiffany was outside the bar smoking. And that's all they did. not go together to one single bar. Well, what about this one? Police and the media claim they had driven to a remote location. But how can it be remote when two homeowners heard the gunshot that night at 2:35 a.m? But Tiffany's killers did not hear the gunshot. After all, here's what you must believe to believe the police story, that the couple didn't know the gun had gone off. Even at 160 decibels, not to hear the gun, they must run for 2 miles. But wait, they said they could hear Tiffany and the shooter arguing. Well, what do you think? So here it is. Yes, we heard them arguing, but not a gunshot. We drove for 16 minutes to the not remote location, and we didn't go driving around. We did, however, go target shooting, and we did leave without any clue where Tiffany was, since we didn't hear the gunshots. But she was not in the car for the ride home. Yeah, okay.
I gotta go buy a new gun. I'll never threw mine off the bridge.
Good. You know, good. I'm glad. Hey.
I'm in a much stabler area than I was now, so I don't worry about having a firearm now. But then I was pretty unstable, so.
Josh, do me a favor. Don't ever kill yourself. That's why you liked my dad. Remember what he wrote? I mean, the first night I met you?
Mm-hmm.
He said that some people just take some time and fucking write down your fucking principles and values and hold to them. And just hold to them. That's why you liked my dad. Remember what he wrote? I mean, the first night I met you?
Mm-hmm.
He said this.
You know, at least it's a relationship that I can have.
Tell me, so this is what I want to know, because like what happened was,
let her calm down.
See, this is why I want to talk to you. Because what happened
that's
with me...
something else I've learned in life. When I was younger, I would have stayed on the situation and probably made it worse.
I never would have stayed on it when I was younger.
Giving her space and letting her think about it. Probably in a week she's going to call me and just be like, hey, how's it going? Just checking in with you.
Can I tell you something?
I gotta go buy a new gun. I gotta go buy a new gun. I gotta go buy a new gun.
Sometimes you have to go to hell to help everybody else who's fallen.
I disagree.
Have you been there?
I gotta go.